You're going to hit record button, right?
Yep, we're recording.
All right. Thank you all today for joining. Before we get started, and if you're not familiar with Bills, I'd like to take a second to tell you a little bit about us. We have been in the Infor ecosystem for over 26 years. We are entirely Infor focused. We do nothing but Infor implementations, upgrades, and managed services. We support all aspects of the technology, including S3, Landmark, and Cloud Suite, including HCM, finance, and supply chain. In fact, we have been recognized and given partnering awards in 8 out of the last 10 years. Our consultants bring 15 plus years of consulting experience in this space and the equivalent in professional experience. Some were former benefit managers, compensation managers, directors of supply chain, as well as former controllers and CFOs. Class. Class is an independent organization that ranks healthcare IT performance. Bales was recognized as top of class for 2020 and 2021 in the Infor partner ecosystem. Exciting news for the Infor community. Early this year, Bales became part of Nordic, an industry-leading healthcare consulting firm. Bales will still operate as a wholly owned subsidiary and continue to be led by Jamie Bales. Nordic will provide us with resources to fund our growth, expand our business, and support our customers more effectively. For healthcare customers, it allows us to bring together the Nordic's capabilities in the EHR space to provide a more holistic solution, including specific expertise in EHR and ERP integration. This combination will offer best practice model to reduce implementation risks and leveraging the data from both systems to drive insights and outcomes. Today's session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to all registrants. If you're not registered and would like to receive the link, please email mollyvelasco@bales.com to request a link. Again, we thank you for joining today. Yusuf, it's all you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Hi, everyone. My name is Yusuf Guvenc. I'm the principal supply chain consultant at Bales. I've been in the Infor environment since 1998, starting with the version 7 and all the way up to FSM version 11. I've been with Bales since May of this year. And today we're going to talk to you about David Williams is another co-host on this program. And he and I will talk about different methods of inventory replenishment in Infor. So with this, I will turn it over to David so he can introduce himself, and then I'll be back after a few slides. David?
Thank you, Yusuf. Just a little bit about my background. I've been on the supply chain side of Infor really from the beginning of my consulting career, and then I've been with Bales since March of this year. Throughout my consulting career, I've been involved in lead implementations, upgrades, provided a lot of system training and system support, most recently in the healthcare vertical. And as Yusuf mentioned, today I'll be assisting and mainly commenting on the different methods of inventory replenishment that's available at Infor. So with that said, let's go to the agenda.
Well, David, I think we should talk about the disclaimer first before we move on.
Yeah, I'll read that. The information provided in this presentation is related to implementing and upgrading Infor version 11 Cloud Suite. The material information contained within this presentation is for general information purposes only. You should not solely rely on the material information contained therein as a basis for making business, legal, procedural, or system-related decisions. Bales makes no representations or warranties of any kind expressed or implied about the accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to the information presented for any purpose. Any reliance you place on such materials without consultation is therefore strictly at your own risk. It's highly recommended that you contact Bales & Associates, LLC to make sure the solutions are tailored specifically to your needs. Thank you. Today's agenda, Yusuf is really going to go into detail about the different inventory replenishment methods, an overview. I'll be discussing setup decisions, how reorder quantity codes work, setup and processing, and maintaining real-time inventory levels. So the inventory replenishment at Infor, Proper inventory control is a core function of any industry, whether it's healthcare, retail, manufacturing, or distribution. In Infor, there's several ways to effectively manage inventory stock levels by proper system setups and running batch programs, as well as conducting certain frequent activities to assist with keeping inventory stock levels as close to real time as possible. And I'm going to comment on that first statement, Yusuf, how important this topic is today that he'll be covering. Inventory is a huge topic on the balance sheet. The financial implications are great. We've all seen situations where when the replenishment side, when the reordering side is not in sync, it's not set up properly, what kind of financial implications, stock outs, misordering, and so forth. So I've been with clients where, you know, it's not really a visual system, but they kind of tend to make it that way, or they really don't understand the setup. And that's what Yusuf's going to cover today, where it'll be efficient and productive. Next slide. And there's 4 different methods for auto-replenishing inventory items. So a reorder method is determined when setting up each item's location. That's kind of a key there. The setup is item specific, another key. Therefore, each item can have a different replenishment method. So he's going to cover auto-replenishing from vendors using requisitions, auto-replenishing from vendors using purchase orders, auto-replenishing from another perpetual location, and auto-replenishing of bins from other bins. Thank you, Yusuf.
Thank you, David. Okay, so we have 4 different methods of replenishing your inventory. First one is creating purchase orders directly to the vendors. So the inventory vendor reorder advice, which is called in FSM or version 11, generates the purchase orders directly from the system, and issues go out to the vendors. Second method is first generating a requisition. So you can view, adjust, edit the requisition for your inventory items, and then generate your purchase orders using the PO interface program. And then the third one is replenishing from another inventory location. So this is internal replenishment. And the last one is replenishing bins from other bins inside the same inventory location. So that means, you know, we can have a low unit of measure replenishing from a bulk area, a bulk bin, maybe. So we'll be covering in detail how these work.
And Yusuf, from your experience, what do you see on the PO versus requisition? Are you seeing any commonality what clients tend to use most of?
In my experience, it's been the first option, which is creating the vendor reorder advice, therefore creating a purchase order first. But then I have seen also work with clients who wanted to create requisitions first so they can edit them. And even and a few of them even want their inventory items to go through the approval process. Therefore, a requisition has to be created first before a PO can.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so there are several reasons why you would want a requisition, but for those who are comfortable with their reorder points, mins and maxes, they tend to use the first option, which is just creating a purchase order and then issuing it out to the vendors. Okay, so we have some setup decisions to make before you venture onto the automatic replenishment process. So Infor offers 2 methods or 2 policies. The first one is the fixed order point. This is where when the stock levels fall below a certain fixed point, then an order is generated to replenish stocks. So when I say an order is generated, it could be a PO or requisition or a transfer document. The second one is time-phased order point. So this is a replenishment method that uses supply and demand planning. And it also works, excuse me, it also works with forecasting, therefore analyzing the item's movements and basing the future orders on that movement. And this is commonly used, this time-phased order, in industries where finished goods and assemblies are required and raw materials are used. And again, we see this primarily in the manufacturing sector. Although there have been a few times that I've seen it used in the healthcare environment as well. Once you make that decision, fixed order or time-phased order reordering, then you need to determine which reorder document that you will need to create or you wish to create when you are running your order replenishment programs. So the options are purchase order requisition, transfer document, which is a document that would be used when transferring from one inventory location to another, or replenishing one inventory location from another. If they are their proximities are fairly close, so that happens simultaneously. Stock goes down in one location while it increases it in the other location that's receiving it. So that gets done automatically. Whereas in transit document, that's where you have warehouses or inventory locations that are fairly far away from each other. And you don't want the real-time update done in the system for the receiving end. So they rather receive it when the shipment arrives at their receiving dock and update their stock levels that way. And the last one is the issue document. Again, this is used during the transfer process. So there are a couple of options here that we can talk about. The reorder point codes. We have a fixed reorder point and a variable reorder point. Right? The fixed reorder point works with fixed reorders, reorder quantities, as well as variable reorder points. Variable reorder point, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. Fixed reorder points will work with the fixed points where a certain, when the stock falls below a certain number, then it activates or triggers. Whereas variable reorder point works with calculating, having the system calculate what your reorder points are and how you're going to reorder these items. The reorder quantity codes, we'll be talking about these in more detail later in a few more slides. We have 4 options: fixed reorder quantity, we have a difference quantity, maximum level, and the economic order quantity options when you're making a decision on how you want the system to calculate what needs to be ordered. There's also an a field called order multiple in your inventory location table, and that is usually set to 1. I've rarely seen it set it to more than 1. When that happens, it'll be ordered in the multiple of that quantity. And I put an example here that says if the multiple is 10 and your maximum reorder level is 14, system will order 10. That's assuming that your stock on hand is 12. Now it triggers the reorder mechanism. So system will order 10, but if the maximum is 14, it has not reached the system where it reached the quantity of 14. Therefore, it will order another 10 to make sure that the 14 is covered. So as a result, your total replenishment will be 20. Again, this is I've seen this very rarely used, and this can cause an unnecessary increase in your inventory valuation as well as your inventory stocks. Okay, so we have also lead time control settings in the inventory location table. When you set the code to S, which is system calculates, it calculates the lead time by calculating the PO receipt date minus the PO date, and the number of days in between will be the system calculated lead time. System also updates this code if the difference between those two dates is greater than 50%. And then the system will change that control flag to R, which is for needs review. So the inventory folks can review these settings. Excuse me. Manually entered, which is M. PO receipts do not update the average, last, or the previous lead times if the control flag is set to M or even R. So it is best that we set this to S and let the system do its calculation. And this allows for manual reporting reasons. And also it helps the users to calculate or readjust their reorder points and quantities. All right, let's take a look at how these quantity codes work. We said there are 4, and the first one is a fixed. Here's an example. If I have a stock on hand of 5 and the reorder point is 7, that means I'm below my threshold. And if I set my reorder quantity to 10, regardless of what my stock on hand quantity is, as long as it's below my reorder point, it's going to order that quantity each time. So every time I will be getting quantity of 10, even if it falls, even if the stock on hand is 6. This makes a huge, huge impact when your reorder points are high and your stock on hand could fall just a few increments below that reorder point, which could be very high. And if your reorder quantity is high as well, then you will end up with really excessive stock on hand. So you really have to be careful when you are setting these items to fixed. Again, as we said in the beginning, these options are item based, right? So each item, depending on how you stock it or how many you stock, you can set these settings differently for each item. Next one is called the difference. So whenever the stock on hand falls below the reorder point, system will order the difference between the reorder point and the stock on hand quantity. Example is, I have a stock on hand of 12, my reorder point is 20, system will order 8 more. The next one is maximum. So this works similar to the difference, but it also takes this takes the fact that we need to set a maximum order quantity, whereas in the difference we didn't have to. System is just doing a simple subtraction to come up with the order quantity. So the maximum is whenever the stock on hand falls below the reorder point, system will order the difference between the maximum order quantity and the stock on hand quantity. Example is, my reorder point is 10, but I have 4 on my shelf. And my maximum order quantity is 15. Therefore, it's going to take the 15, subtract the 4, and come up with 11. So my inventory will never go over 15 in this example. And the last option is economic order quantity. Right off the bat, I can say that this is used in manufacturing environment where the system calculates what your reorder points are and how much to order. So the reorder points, they determine when to order, but the economic order quantity determines and calculates how much to order. A program wants to do your setup, and it's really a simple. You just select your reorder document and enter your safety stock levels. And after that, the system will do the calculation. So we have a program that's called Inventory ELQ and Reorder Calculation that uses a couple of different formulas that include the annual usage, carrying costs, ordering costs, safety stock, and lead time days, including the shipping costs, to calculate and update these values in the item location table. So to achieve this, the reorder policy must be set to fixed order point, and the reorder point code must be set to variable. Instead of fixed reorder point, we need to set it to variable reorder point. And those are the 4 reorder quantity codes. Do we have any questions on anything that we talked about so far?
There's nothing in the chat right now, but if
You
you
know,
have a question, feel free.
Yeah, Yusuf, you mentioned using caution on that fixed. One other things have you seen where clients maybe did not set it up properly or didn't use the kind of caution you mentioned?
I'm sorry, I think I broke up there. Sorry, David. Can you repeat the last part, please?
Yeah, you'd mentioned, using caution on that fixed
Yes.
reorder point. Have you seen other instances of setup where people maybe just didn't have the knowledge transfer to do it, or maybe they just ignored certain things? This is very precise, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. There was a hospital in New York that I work with, and they wanted to play it safe, but luckily they caught it during the testing phase of the implementation, and they saw how much their inventory would increase, especially with high volume items. For example, if I set up a reorder point for, let's say, 200, and I fall down to 198, and my reorder point is, let's say, another 100 or 150, and as soon as that program runs to generate a purchase order, it's going to order that 150 or 200 on top of the 198 that I already have in the warehouse. So that can really, if you're not careful, really jack up the quantities in your warehouse.
Right. Yeah, I've seen instances of that, stories of
Yeah,
arriving on the dock and
right.
and they knew immediately this is something's gone wrong. So yeah.
Yeah, and you can quickly run out of space in your warehouse on where to
Yeah.
put these large quantities.
Mhm.
And not, of course, not to mention the value of your inventory
Right.
goes considerably high very quickly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the personnel having to deal with where to put it, like you said, or if you're going to receive it temporarily and then send it back, all that excessive
Expenses and
exercise.
labor, sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
labor intensive. Thank you, Yusuf.
You're welcome.
Yusuf, we do have a question.
Sure.
They're asking how they can check the replenish order setup and how it's set up.
The replenishment, the setup is done in your inventory location where your inventory items are defined. So in FSM, when you open up your item that's attached to the item location, when you open that item and see the details, there is a tab called Reorder. And within that tab, you can see all these fields, your reorder policy, reorder point codes, your reorder quantities, how much to reorder, what your thresholds are. So basically, your mins and maxes are set in under that tab. And then there's also another tab that I'm about to talk about, which is the replenishment tab. And that decides where you will be getting your items from when you are replenishing. So I hope that answered your question.
Yep, I'll let you know if there's any follow-up.
Okay. All right, so where do we replenish from? Once we get the setup done, Infor offers two sources. You can either get your item from a vendor or internally from another inventory location, another warehouse. When you set these up, there is a field called priority. A lot of people confuse this field, saying that, well, if I don't like this, if the system doesn't like this one for some reason, it'll go to priority 2 and then priority 3 if it's not available. Well, this is how it works. You can define more than one priority, but priority of 1 is always considered the highest, and that's the priority that the system will always use. So it is used for replenishment conditions such as available stock on hand. So what does that mean? Available stock on hand is if I have the same item that I can replenish from multiple warehouses. Of course, then we'll need to talk about how to link these items together in these multiple warehouses so that the system can check if the stock is available in warehouse 1. If not, it'll go and check the warehouse 2, which will be priority of 2. And then you can have a third one, and that will be priority of 3. So the system will start with the first, go on to the second, go on to the third, until it finds the quantities that it's required for replenishment and create a ticket for those. The other one is the replenishment condition of defaulting a cost vendor. And what that means is if I define a vendor in this tab, which is the replenishment tab, saying that I want this item to come from vendor 1000. But if this vendor 1000 does not have a cost in the system, meaning that it is not on contract, whether it's in S3 or FSM, in FSM that would be contract management. If this vendor does not have a contract for this particular item, then it will search for another vendor, which you can set up as priority 2, and then priority 3, and so on, until it finds a vendor that has the item on the contract. Then it will use that vendor and generate a purchase order for that vendor. Well, what if that item is on another contract, which is a lower cost than the vendor that you define as your replenishment vendor? Typically, when you're entering a requisition or a purchase order, the system will automatically find the lowest price and default that to your requisition line or the purchase order line. But if you are setting this up or defining it as a replenishment vendor, then the cost does not come into play. It'll find the first one, not the first one, sorry, it'll find the, it will look for priority of 1 for the vendor. If it's not on the contract, it will go to the next vendor. If it finds a contract, it will select that one. Whether or not that contract price is higher or lower than another one that may exist in the system. When you are replenishing your items, another key, when you're replenishing from a different location, from a different warehouse, another key field there is the bin location. So if I'm replenishing warehouse A from B, I need to indicate that it's in company B, sorry, in warehouse B, and in that warehouse, the item that I'm looking for resides in this bin number. So just keep that in mind as well. Now we're coming to the the processing of these replenishments. So the first option is to creating a direct order. All right, what does that mean? Once I do my setups, my mins and maxes, my reorder points, and my reorder point codes, reorder quantity codes, and all of that, I run a program that's called Vendor Reorder Advice. That program generates a purchase order, and in my item location, I must have the automatic PO field set to yes. In the item replenishment source, I need to have a vendor and or a purchase from location. And then I run the inventory vendor reorder advice program to create a PO interface file. And then when I run the processing purchase request, which is the PO interface program, that program will generate your purchase orders. Okay, so that is generating a replenishment document as a purchase order that will be issued to the vendor. Again, you need to be very comfortable or very confident with your inventory levels and your setups in the system in order to use this.
Yeah, the great thing about that use of that reorder advice, it really gives you a chance to review any discrepancies and make any adjustments before those POs are created, right?
That is true. That is a very good point. You can run this program in a report mode or non-update mode to review the data before running it in update mode and then generating the purchase orders that way. Yes, absolutely correct. The next method is auto-replenishing using requisitions. So the difference here is when you do your setups in your item location table, your reorder document must be set to requisition, and again, automatic PO field must be set to yes. And then you do the same kind of replenishment source setup, defining your vendor and or your purchase from location. And then a program is run. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't mention that yet. A requesting location setup is required, where the inventory location also needs to be set up as a requesting location. Remember, we're generating a requisition. So on a typical requisition, what do we need? We need a requester and a requesting location, right? So when we run the auto replenishment program, that itself is a requester, quote unquote. And for that requester, we need a requesting location. In this case, the requesting location is the inventory location or your warehouse. Therefore, we need to set up that warehouse as an inventory location, as a requesting location in the requesting location table. We will then assign this requesting location code to the requester. And that's on the next slide. Right? So now we have to define a requester. This has to be a valid requester in the requester's form, the application. We then assign this requesting location to requester, right? So who is the requester again? It is the program that will generate the requisition. And then we're going to assign the requester to the inventory location table. Now, in the older version, in S3, we had to create a unique requester, which had to be the combination of your warehouse code followed by the program or the form number, all in uppercase. And we don't need to do that anymore in FSM. We'll just assign the requester to the inventory location table, not the place where you assign your items to the inventory location, but your inventory location actually, where the addresses are defined and your account numbers are defined for that location. So once you do those two setups, the requesting location and the requester, and you associate them to each other, we run the inventory location replenishment program to create the requisition. Now the requisition is created, it can be reviewed before moving forward. So if I'm creating the requisition to replenish another warehouse, naturally it's going to create a pick ticket. And then the inventory in transit shipping program runs to generate the transfer document, and the items are received using the inventory transaction form called in transit. I think I skipped one here. Okay, so we started with auto replenishment from vendors using requisitions. Again, we define the requester and we run the replenishment by requisition program. And that, similar to the advice program, it creates the purchase order interface file. And then your your PO interface program, it generates the purchase orders to go out to the vendors. So the requisitions, once they're created, it allows the warehouse staff or the manager to review these requisitions and make adjustments. They can take out items, they can increase quantities that the system is suggesting to order. If a long weekend is coming up, you may want to increase those quantities. You can add even more items to it that is not due to be replenished because long weekend is coming. And then you can release those requisitions where they can convert to purchase orders. This is going too fast. Okay, requisitions. Auto replenishment from another inventory location. So we just touched on that. The setup on when you are replenishing from another inventory location is your reorder document is a requisition, but your automatic PO flag is set to no, because this is not going out to the vendor. It's going to go out to another location for replenishment. With this setup, your replenishment source, instead of defining a vendor for that item, you will define the replenishing inventory location, which will be the warehouse, which will replenish your inventory, and the bin location of the item also needs to be defined at the location that is replenishing your inventory. And the requesting location setup, again, is defining the inventory location also as a requesting location. And then we assign that to the requester. Okay, and we talked about this one. Okay, the last one is auto replenishing of bins from other bins. So this is used inside the same warehouse. All right, so you can have multiple bins carrying the same item, and you can transfer items or replenish items from one bin to another. This is done in 3 steps in order to automate it. You first define your mins and maxes, which is your reorder point code and your reorder point and reorder quantities. Using the table that's called bin reorder policies, you access that form, you enter your item, your location, and then you also define from what bin that you will be replenishing that item from. This bin reorder policies form is item specific, just like your inventory location is. It's item specific. And now you run a program that's called bin transfer documents program that generates a document where it can be reviewed and released to update the stock levels in both locations simultaneously. When I say in both locations, I mean the bin locations simultaneously. If you don't want to do auto replenishment of bins, you can go straight to the 3rd step on this slide, which is to process a bin transfer document table. You can access that table and manually do your transfers. That means you need to eyeball your bins, saying, oh, this bin needs some X number of items from this other bin. So you need to first determine that, write it down somewhere, and then come into Infor and access this form to process that transfer. Do we have any questions?
There's nothing currently in the chat. I'll let you know if anything pops up in there.
Okay. All right, so this is the last slide in maintaining real-time inventory levels. So how do we help the system maintain real-time inventory levels? There are some daily functions that need to happen in order to achieve this. In almost every implementation, I witnessed a daily cycle counting, however big or small these cycle counts are. And this helps validating the accuracy of your inventory based on what's on the shelf compared to what's on your system. And it's really, really essential to the organization or your inventory processing. It also provides you in detail what items need to be stocked and marked as obsolete. This also helps you to adjust your mins and maxes. And there are 2 very important functions that are often overlooked, of course, not on purpose. These are the timely releasing of your inventory transactions that happen daily throughout the day, such as walk-ups to the warehouse, So a staff member may walk up to the warehouse just asking for an item. They take the item, they go away, and that transaction is not entered into the system until maybe a day or two later, or maybe even never if they don't write it down somewhere. Of course, the ideal way of doing that is as soon as they take the item, you should sit down in front of Infor and process the transaction as an issue transaction. And of course, the other one is, which is even bigger, which are the warehouse shipments. So these pick tickets must be processed daily. So nothing really should linger on to the next day for processing. This definitely will help you keep real-time inventory levels in your system, because these pick tickets, especially coming down from PARs, they are in large volume and they really need to be taken care of as quick as possible to adjust the inventory levels.
Yeah, Yusuf, your point on that cycle counting, I've been with, you have two clients, they put everything off to the perpetual inventory, either quarterly or even twice a year, and at that point, things can really get out of control. Like you said, that the critical, it's essential and required for perpetual inventory to catch those small bin groups, whatever you're counting in, and you could do it for high dollar items or different types, and that really goes a long way, doesn't it, for keeping your inventory in tune and processed correctly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, doing your complete physical inventory at least once a year. Of course, I'm sure you do that today. However, in order to keep down the counting the complete inventory multiple times a year, you do your small cycle counts throughout the year. So that is always much more accurate and effective as far as keeping the right inventory levels and real-time inventory levels as well. So in summary, actually, what you're doing is when you start this replenishment process is you are deciding between a fixed order point or time-phased order point. Time-phased order point is used mostly in the manufacturing world, whereas fixed order point is used in healthcare or retail world or just basic warehousing functions. After you select that option, then you have to select your reorder point codes. Is it going to be fixed or variable? And then you define those points. At what point do I trigger the auto replenishment process? And then you decide how you want to reorder. Is it going to be fixed, a difference, or maximum? And based on those settings, you run the programs that I've mentioned earlier to achieve those 4 different types of replenishment process. Again, keep in mind that this is not warehouse specific, this is item specific. So each item can have a different as needed, as required. So with that, that's all I have. And if you have questions, please feel free.
Still
Thank
not
you,
seeing
Yusuf.
anything in the chat, but yes, thank you.
All right, so we have other sessions coming in the future. On the Friday, October 15th, we have 2 more sessions, which is asset management, version 10 to version 11, and that's 12 p.m. Eastern. The second one that day is employee and manager home page basics. That's 1 p.m. Eastern. The following week, Friday, October the 22nd, we have 2 more sessions. First one is creating and scheduling reoccurring jobs. So this is very exciting, and it's very effective in your daily workings. And the second one is structured relations and you. That's 1 p.m. Eastern. And then on October the 29th, a couple of days before the Halloween holiday, we have a continuous performance engagement. Check-ins, pulse surveys, and badges, and that's 12 p.m. on Eastern time. And then we have a financial session, which is called Ask Me Anything. So I would take that challenge. That's 1 p.m. Eastern. And for this session, Ask Me Anything, please submit your questions prior to October 22nd to be considered for inclusion via the information that you are looking at. You can do it online or you can email. And of course, you can always contact Molly Velasco at balesllc.com to register for these sessions.
Yusuf, we did have a question come in if you
Sure.
want to take that one right now.
Sure.
So are there instructions somewhere on the proper way to complete cycle counts? Example, do you have to freeze, unfreeze those small groups of inventory? And what if pick tickets are still being processed? Or do you just use adjustments with cycle count code?
Excellent question. Yes, we do have exact processing steps and procedures for small cycle counts. In small cycle counts, of course, you need to freeze a number of items in order to count them and update them into the system. And we have 3 ways of doing that. One of them is using inventory classes. If your items have proper inventory classes assigned to them in the item master. Second one is grouping of bin numbers into a cohesive code under one code, which can have similar items or similar bins, containing similar items. In other words, if I have sutures or if I have needles, gloves, or non-medical inventory. So those can be grouped by their bin numbers under a single group or groups, and then you can freeze those. And the third one is freezing items by their item numbers. So you can use multiple item numbers to just freeze those, and then create the count sheets, go out and count them, come back and enter them into the system, and then update the system with the counts. Of course, if you are using handhelds, this can all be done through handhelds as well when you go out and count them. Yeah, so we have instructions on how to do all of this stuff, how to set it up, and what programs to run.
Okay, a few more questions coming in.
Sure.
The first one is, what can cause multiple line items with 0 values on a PO?
0 value meaning, I'm assuming it's a dollar amount. That can be because the item is flagged as a no charge item. That is the only instance that would happen, because you cannot enter a 0 cost manually or using the PO interface program. If it doesn't find the price, it will not convert that requisition to a PO without a cost. So the only reason that I can think of is that item being flagged as a no charge item. Typically, it will be like baby formulas and diapers, things like that.
Okay, and next question is it easier to use handhelds or Core Lawson for cycle counts?
It's going to be in a combination of both. You still have to use Lawson to freeze items. The place where you would do the counts and interface them into Lawson will be through handhelds. So once you freeze the items, those items can be interfaced onto your handheld. And then you would know, instead of printing count sheets, you will follow what the handheld is showing. You can go and scan those items and enter a count on the handheld for each item. And then that will be interfaced back into Lawson, where you'll have a chance to review them before making a permanent update into Infor as far as the quantities go. So it'll be a combination of both.
Great. That looks, let's see. Oh, she says, right, using the IC175. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that was the last question that I can see.
Okay. So with that, let's move on to the next. Are we on this one, Ollie?
Yeah, we could do that, Yusuf. I could wrap up with there. Thanks, Yusuf, for that presentation, and David. It was appreciated to all that attend today. As a closing thought, we wanted you to be aware of our Coffee with Consultant offering. If you have any questions about what you saw today or any questions related to the Infor products, please reach out to us via our website. We will connect you with a consultant who will spend a half hour with you at no charge. They will answer any questions related to your Infor system. Thank you all for attending, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Yusuf. Thanks, David.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.
Really great job. Thank you.
Thank you.